Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. I'm very glad actually to present this in a cinema because I consider myself first and foremost a film critic actually and a staff writer for several magazines, and I still do this as a part-time activity. This is how I started out after high school. So as you will see, I think my approach is being informed by a very cinephile way of looking at images, and but also by a personal context since I grew up in Romania, etc. So today I've prepared a short talk about the Romanian television archives, with a focus on particularly on the Romanian Revolution of December 1989. And I think this is very simple, really, what I'm going to present here, because it stems actually from a personal intuition, from some empirical observations that grew out of my recent quite extensive engagement with the archives of the Romanian Revolution. And this is, of course, certainly, a work in progress, which is now beginning to take shape. And here I want to advance some possibilities, some trajectories that I will consider in my PhD, which specifically deals with these archives in part. And so yeah, about the Romanian Revolution. Now, as you all know, I suppose this historical event became a worldwide phenomenon thanks to its live broadcast mainly. So there's no need for me to tell you that, for many theorists and even filmmakers around the world, it deeply altered the history of media. But I'd like to start from somewhere else. Recently, I have been able to visit an exhibition held at the Revolution Memorial in Timisoara, which is the city where the revolution ignited mid-December in 1989. It's located at the far west of the country. And what struck me about this exhibition was its reliance on slogans, from the most simple ones, which you find here in this photo, like bread, not bullets, or down with communism, and so on, to more complex ones, such as through television you've lied to the people. Because these slogans, I think, managed to acknowledge, and of course, integrating them here, managed to acknowledge the popular uprising through a rich spirit of invention, but also intervention, I think, in actuality, by using these slogans as something between poetry, which was, I suppose, very widespread at the time, because literature had an important social value in that era, but also something from a sort of primary found footage that was shared by everyone. And throughout this exhibition, there was also this hallway from the memorial, which was covered by the very famous photographic portrait of dictator Nicolae Ceausescu. And you see also on the left, maybe, that there are several magazines ranging from film magazines to tourist magazines, mathematics, and so on, which all opened on their first page with this photo precisely, or a variation of it, showing the dictator, the conductor, as he was known, and as he was in a way giving his blessing to the activity of the magazine. This made me think of something else. There are several famous sequences of the Romanian Revolution, and I think most of you are somehow familiar with them. These photos, I brought them on here on a simple search using some keywords, and they belong to several important newspapers and outlets around the world, like Le Monde Diplomatique, Deutsche Welle, The Guardian. One of these moments is that one when we see protesters burning Ceausescu's photo in the street. And in fact, this hatred towards ossified symbols is, of course, something very common in any kind of popular uprising. Now, I have been researching on the images of the Romanian Revolution for a few years now. During my MA in Paris, France, I observed at the BNF, the Bibliothèque Nationale de France, how these images circulated in a loop on national French television during those days of December 1989. When I began working last year, working my way in the Romanian archives, what I felt was more of a déjà vu than a real discovery, not only because the French media had imported an important mass of images belonging to their Romanian counterpart, although this is, of course, capital. So not only because I already had seen them, like in a room, already investigating them, but also because their emphasis on recurrent sequences, such as people on tanks and trucks who were chanting, or the mass graves of Timisoara, which turned out, of course, to be something of a proto-fake news, or scenes of collective meetings and marching, or the figure of Ceausescu, which was nothing like what we saw earlier, but was old and scared, etc. All this, I think, was somehow repetitive, redundant, seen, but also in a metaphorical sense already, not just because I had already dealt with them in another context, and mirroring a thirst of sensational stories coming from a lesser-known, backward country in Eastern Europe, one that had to liberate itself in a very savage way. So why, in a sense, did it have to be like this? In other words, why these key images of the revolution? And how to account for a sense of familiarity that I suppose invades every spectator, even the younger one, when he or she, when these images are being seen even for the first time. Of course, by this I am by no means minimizing the actual prowess of the Romanian people, which brings me to tears every time I watch, for example, Andrei, Ujica, and Harun Farocki's seminal film from 1992, Videograms of a Revolution. But I do mean that in the way events were covered by the media, and also in the way they survived in the popular discourse, there seems to be a sort of scenario at play. And also, in this film, I guess, which deals with the events of the revolution and traces them through found footage, through televised images, the target, the objective was actually to propose a narrative. So to shed a light on the events, on what happened through a mass of chaotic images. So we might ask ourselves, how did this event achieve such a long-lasting impact? Media impact, but also, I suppose, social impact. According to Denis Dilettante, and I'm quoting here a more, let's say, an intervention designed for a lay audience, because I find it all the more significant. The Romanian Revolution seized in so impressive a manner the international attention because it was the only revolution in Eastern Europe at that time, which for many people lived to its promise. By this I mean that it possessed all this array of unfortunate elements of bloodshed, street violence, military vehicles, and of course the execution of the dictator couple. All these factors gave led to the situation in which Romania occupied the front stage of televised transmissions everywhere in the world during the period of Christmas and New Year 1990. In other words, there seems to me to be certain elements or content-related requirements which in general activate in the audience's mind a feeling of revolution, if I may say so. This is now closely related to what French film critic Serge Daney, who wrote extensively on the Romanian Revolution and its images, labeled during the 80s the trademark image. Together with Serge Daney, he wrote that the trademark is the sign which serves to recognize something, to distinguish it from something else, to identify a function. But it is also the trace that is left on a body by a concussion or a blow, etc. The image marks. It possesses its own power, a force of itself, but on the other hand, is also marked. It bears the trace of the powers, the forces that made it. Its future is image to become, in the crazed circulation of science, a stopper, an emblem, a signature, a stimulus, a sort of solidified power. Its function, to tick a box, the place of a link in the chain to prevent any other image from being seen. From crucial films like Videograms of the Revolution to media commemorations at large, this latter only serving to ossify memory, there is a growing threat of reducing the revolution and its coverage to a series of trademark images, I feel. Ceausescu's departure from the presidential palace by helicopter, the mass graves, of course, the trial, etc. And this small mass of knowledge does not resemble in any way the available material that is located in the archives. And I should probably state here that what I found in the Romanian archives was a very, in a way, primitive mass or structure of the mass of images, in the sense that every image from those days was pasted together, welded together with no clear boundary. So it's very easy, I suppose, to trace a chronological thread through these images, but it is more difficult to actually understand when everything was broadcast. So there's that. Now, there is no time to express the sensible experience of navigating through this material and understanding, for example, what it meant for a Romanian population that was used to obey to a very strict state control of television and to only a few daily hours of broadcast, which were also heavily censored, to finally discover something of the possibilities of footage, of televised footage, of live broadcasting. Because this was not just a regular coverage. This was a national television making its first steps as a public free service destined to inform the population. Now, I have selected a few frames from December 22nd, and sorry about the bad quality, but this is how they look now. This is how they were kept, and this is also due to the, let's say, poor quality of the equipment. And December 22nd is the date when Ceausescu's last speech from the Central Committee was recorded. I have focused on a very recurrent type of visual composition. We see a public square, for example, mostly by night, with the camera pointing at nothing precisely, seemingly rolling out of inertia. Only public lights leave a picturesque trace on the video. This reminded me of yet another quote by Serge Daney, written as President Valéry Giscard d'Estaing made his last public apparition on TV. He said that there are rare sights shown on television. The defeated president recorded as he is leaving office is a rare sight. An empty shot on television is also a rare sight. An empty and quiet shot is something even more rare. So I suppose we can see a similarity here, because the then president of Romania fled the office. There is a void of power, and there's a television, more importantly, that needs to understand how to function. So this is a very privileged moment in a way, because we see something which is being born right there, and something which, as we all know from, multiple factors which are social, political, which also belong to marketing and stuff, this moment will not last. So this is all the more, I think, important to be investigated. Okay. Or take, for instance, these two images, in which a powerful spotlight almost burns the image, or the left one, in which it suddenly becomes very difficult to track any presence within the frame. And to wrap up, I would like just to draw your attention to another possible trajectory, because here we see a strange mixture of priests, generals, and civilians, workers, students, artists, poets. A new social hierarchy was in the making, and in the first days of the revolution, it came with the promise of equality and diversity shown on television. So in conclusion, this was, of course, just a short overview of the available possibilities when dealing with the complete archives of an event that we think we know. So here we see a moment in which one of the cameras on television panned to reveal 4 men and the equipment they used, 4 cameramen, and the presenter thanked them for their work. This was a moment when the invisible countershots suddenly came to life as a promise for a different distribution of roles between extras and leading roles. Thank you.
Thank you.
No, I think the material abroad, what I investigate in France, was much more structured, and of course, I guess it deeply, heavily relied on a series of what I call what Serge Daney calls trademark images. Whereas in Romania, we actually, I think, can see everything that was broadcast during those days. So we not only see the hotspots of those days, but everything that would be quickly forgotten, every hesitation, every empty shot, and so on.
So probably most of the shots you showed as an alternative did not circulate across the borders.
No, it was for me. It was actually a surprise to see such shots which lingered on TV, and to imagine how it must have felt to finally have an image of something. But this something is, a content that would become very, very rare on Romanian television, as well as this television became more professional, etc.
And do you think that in current events, like in America, at the Capitol, for instance, there seemed to be a constant live presence of cameras from many angles? Does it differ from a situation in 1989, you think?
I think it's a very good question, and I think, personally, I think we have to actually take a very close look at how these images unfold, because, as you say, I think with every such historical and social disturbance like this, there's something happening for television, for example, and not only for television, of course, but I feel that also maybe in film studies we moved quite quickly from film and cinema to other types of media, and television maybe is caught somewhere in the middle. And of course, in terms of light broadcasting, I think there are things to be noticed, and very interesting things at that, if we take a closer look at images, if we see them, of course, Yeah, thank you, Don. I think you're very right to notice this, and the fact that there's no basically standard theory on what happened is something, of course, very, very striking. And I think, the role of these images, these sticky images, is precisely to lock our interpretation into a dominant narrative that we as researchers, I think have to question constantly, because this event is there. It's now, I don't know, almost 35 years since this happened. So we are moving further and further, and unless we try to reshape a bit and restructure and refurnish the available material, which is much more vast than we think it is, we will only be left with poorer interpretations, which of course serve some higher purposes, of course. So thank you.